One thing nobody ever tells you is when you're assimilating, you're losing part of yourself. Because you want to belong. You want that safety.
How does that feel to not have somewhere that you're really considering as home? How does that show up for you?
Lots of sadness, lots of grief, lots of anger. Because everybody tells you go home. Refugees, when you're a refugee, nobody wants you. You're taking space. You can't go home because you told you don't belong there. You see loss when you come to different places. People want you to become part of their community, but there are rules that you're supposed to follow. One thing is how you speak. There's lots of shaming when you're not speaking the way they are speaking. So then you really work hard on that. And that would cause me great stress. And I remember when we crossed the border and I was staying in North Croatia that first year, I was so grateful I'm there, I have a place to be. But every time I would open my mouth, I would be corrected how I'm saying something.
How does that impact a young girl at that time and maybe a young woman to be having to assimilate so much, to have friends and integrate and be connected, but each time losing a little bit of yourself? What happens there?
This is the Gifts of Trauma podcast. Stories of transformation and healing through compassionate inquiry.
You're very welcome to another episode of the Gifts of Trauma podcast from Compassionate Inquiry. I think by now our audience will be familiar with our desire to uncover and reveal and listen to stories of, I guess, from trauma to healing, from constriction to peace. And today I am joined by Irma Rubil-Jonatan. Am I saying that right, Irma?
Yes. Yes, you are. Yeah, you're pronouncing my name really well. Most people call me Irma.
Irma, I'm glad I got that right. Irma, you're very welcome. I am really keen to chat to you, really excited about this. And I'm just curious, how are you doing in this moment as we begin our conversation?
Yeah, I'm full of gratitude. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Irma, it didn't pass me by that you and I, given our upbringings and where we've grown up, where our families of origin are from, have a lot of similarities there. I would love the opportunity to speak to you about some of those, probably around conflict, war, PTSD, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and those sorts of things. Before we do that, if it's okay with you, I would love you to introduce yourself. How come you came to be sitting with me in an episode of the Gifts of Trauma podcast? How come you're here? Who are you?
I am a psychotherapist and a traumatologist. I am originally from North Bosnia. I was born in Croatia, but the first 11 years I lived in North Bosnia. And I'm compassionate inquiry practitioner, private mentor, and as of recently, one of the facilitators. And I'm currently based in Prague, but part of the year I live in UK. I'm a bit here, and summers I spend most of the time on Croatian seaside. And I joined Compassionate Inquiry 2021. And it seems I'm unable to leave. I found my tribe, I found my place. So yes, this is my family.
Well, thank you. Your introduction sounds very glamorous. Sounds like a bit of a rock star lifestyle, Irma. Summer in Croatia and winter in the UK, or is it the other way around?
So summer Croatia, yeah, and a little bit UK, and here in Prague. This is more to do with me actually not knowing where my home is.
Okay.
I have places that I live, but they don't feel like home. And that's something that I'm searching for, a place where to come and stay, settle down, and just release my roots. And this is something as well that I'm reflecting on last like a year and a half. Yeah, because my home was in North Bosnia and I left and then I moved quite a bit. I moved a lot. I did not put my roots down since then, I could say.
Yeah, thank you. Irma, I want to chat to you a little bit about your recent role as facilitator with Compassionate Inquiry. And maybe we'll laugh at this. And anytime one of these questions comes up, I'm sure we'll have a little chuckle to yourselves. But you said it doesn't feel like you have somewhere that you're really considering as home.
Perception, yes.
I know it's just the use of language, but how does that feel? How does it feel to not have somewhere that you're really considering as home? How does that show up for you?
There's some heaviness. So there is some heaviness in chest. So I guess there is some grief. And home comes with the land. And ownership of land, my experience brought war. And with that, a lot of loss and grief, losing your friends, losing your family, then moving different countries, assimilating. Not because where I was, I didn't belong there. I had to leave. As a kid, I struggled really to understand that. Because that was my home. This is a place where I was born and I belonged to. And then I ended up in Croatia, where apparently I belonged, because midway through the war, I realized I was Croatian. Up till then, I was Yugoslavian, because my parents, they were not distinguishing between Muslim, Serbs, and Croatians. So I was Yugoslavian. And I had family, and I still have family in Serbia and Bosnia, Croatia. And a lot of my friends are coming from mixed families, and there are mixed marriages in my family. So we were Yugoslavians. So when I left home and I went to Croatia, where according to everybody, this is where I was supposed to be, where I belonged, then I had to assimilate and change the language, learn different accent. Then we moved from northern part of Croatia to seaside, and it was a different language with some Italian words and different accent. And then some words that we used in Bosnia were appropriate there, and from northeast Croatia, they were not. So I had to again assimilate. And then I moved to northern Croatia, close to Zagreb, so I had to assimilate again, and then UK. One thing nobody ever tells you is when you're assimilating, you're losing part of yourself. Because you want to belong. You want that safety.
Expand that for me a little bit, Irma. When you assimilate, you lose a little bit of yourself. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
So to be accepted, to have friends, for people not to laugh at you, how you're using certain words, because they understand you when you're using that word, but it's pronounced differently in a different part of the country. So in Croatia, it's a small country, but so many different dialects, and speed, how you speak as well. So intonation and everything. And then you go to UK, and again, different culture, and how you express yourself, how fast you speak, how loud you speak. So you start picking up what's appropriate, and you connect appropriateness with likeness. So me speaking in a certain way, behaving in a certain way, when it's appropriate and according to social rules, then you are more likely to belong, and people are not laughing at you how you're speaking. And I noticed as well that some people don't like when I speak where I'm coming from and when you speak about war, because it upsets them, because it brings the sadness, and some people choose not to hear about it. So then I learned not to speak, and so you kind of suppress things because it brings safety. And when people are comfortable around you, when you behave in a certain way, when you present yourself in a certain way, then you're liked, and then you get to have friends. And that is something what I desperately wanted, because I lost my friend, lost my family when I moved. So that was a huge shock. And I didn't really understand why it all happened. You're connected with people, nationality and different religion didn't matter. And then one day it started to matter. So a different set of values that did not resonate with me.
Yeah, thank you. Irma, it's fascinating to me. When we assimilate, we lose a little bit of ourselves. And you have both described there the polarity of these things. how assimilating and separating from yourself and changing how you speak and how fast you speak and how loud you speak and how you behave, how that helped you to connect with others. And at the same time, you describe that as losing a little bit of yourself each time as well. What's the impact of that for actually, before I ask you that question, Irma, can I just do something here? Sometimes when we speak of war, and I know for me as well, being from the north of Ireland, you and I, we are not 200 years old. So this is recent history. This is in the last 25 years we're talking about, certainly for you. And I think it's important just to name that. It wasn't 1845. It was in the
Mid-90s.
yeah, the 90s, 2000s. Yeah. I think that's important to name that. How does that impact a young girl at that time and maybe a young woman to be having to assimilate so much, to have friends and integrate and be connected, but each time losing a little bit of yourself? What happens there?
Lots of sadness, lots of grief, lots of anger. Because everybody tells you go home. Refugees, when you're a refugee, nobody wants you. You're taking space. You can't go home because you're told you don't belong there. You see loss, and when you come to different places, people want you to become part of their community, but there are rules that you're supposed to follow. So, one thing is how you speak. And there's lots of shaming when you're not speaking the way they are speaking. So then you really work hard on that. And I remember making sure I'm calling certain bits and pieces, your clothes or your like trousers and sneakers, you call them specific name that's appropriate for that region. And that would cause me great stress. And I remember when we crossed the border and I was staying in North Croatia that first year, I was so grateful I'm there. I have a place to be and there is level of safety. But every time I would open my mouth, I would be corrected how I'm saying something. Because Croatian way, we say sneakers this way and tomato that way and donut this way. So I remember not being able to finish one sentence, at least one word not being pointed out to me that needs to be said differently. So there was fear in that. So you just know that you don't belong unless you fix that, correct that. Lots of anxiety and need to have friends because I lost all my friends because some people chose to leave shortly before war officially started. So that was devastating. That was really hard because I was really close to a Serbian family and they left. It was the safest thing for their family to do. Some other families stayed, but they left when we left as well. A lot of my friends were mixed families, kind of Muslim and Serbian. We said our goodbyes forever. So that was a shock. And so you come to a place apparently where everybody tells you belong there, but you don't know anybody. And according to them, you don't speak their language. You need to do better. So you start belonging. And some of them are saying you should go home. So it was confusing, very confusing, lots of loss, lots of grief, lots of fear, because my dad was on the front line at the time, and I know it sometimes would pass 2 weeks. Is he alive or not? You have these new friends, and there are certain kind of standards you need to meet to have those friends, so you're not shamed. So I was focused on learning those words and adjusting my accent to have less pressure when I'm speaking, when I'm connecting with people, almost being like a chameleon there. And I managed on the end. But that experience of belonging didn't happen because I was working so hard to belong. So it never properly relaxed.
Irma, it must have been absolutely exhausting. That's the sense I'm getting right now.
It was, yeah.
Not being able to finish a sentence before coming across a word that you had to say differently, and fear and anxiety and loss and grief and moving and assimilating and adjusting. And
You started from beginning and you don't like it where you are. So, and you have no choice.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting. How did you cope with all that? How did you deal with all that?
A part of it was detaching, ignoring. I ignored war, so I pretended it's not happening and started connecting. I eventually did make friends and safety started showing up, releasing my roots, one could say. And then close to war ending, we were almost killed because toward the end, bombs were going everywhere. So not only on the front line, but as well were thrown on civilians. So there was an incident where our whole family almost died. And so my dad had enough. So he was like, okay, so yeah, it's pointless to fight. So he picked us up and then we moved within like less than a week from that incident to seaside. So that was a shock. So friends I made, place that I thought I belong, and I'm releasing my roots. Now we went completely on the other side of Croatia that was not affected by a war. And that was a shock, living on a small island, different culture, very closed community. And we were told within a couple of months at school as children, when are we leaving? Because we are affecting their tourism. Because there were some as well refugees from central part of Bosnia, from Sarajevo and Mostar. That was a rude awakening. You come to that place and we are taking space because less space for tourists. So we are affecting how things are happening on island. So that was just, okay, so where do I go now? So then again, adjustment, making friends, starting from beginning. And in a very short period of time, starting again from beginning. And people that were there, their experience of war was way different than us. They were watching that on television. They never experienced any of the stuff that we experienced coming from Bosnia or northeast of Croatia. Some people actually didn't want us to speak about it because it would cause sadness for them.
I hear that, Irma. I hear that. We didn't really do much pleasantries, Irma, and we got straight in there. And I'm curious, how are you doing in this moment as we're having this conversation?
I'm looking back at the past and how heavy it was. And I think I have gratitude for that period in my life because I lived, I survived, I made lots of friends, I connected with people, I was exposed to different places, I was able to grow. It was stressful, it was difficult, it was hard, but actually prepared me for work that I'm doing now. And I already knew as a teen, I'm going to be, I don't know, therapist, psychologist, something of that kind. There was no question for me what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I think some of those experiences actually prepared me for the work I'm doing currently. And looking back, the level of resilience that was there. Yeah. So I have gratitude there. There's sadness looking back at what happened and all those losses and ridiculousness of war. And of people that were sitting at the same table eating. They were friends and all family till yesterday, and then next day they are not anymore. Didn't make sense then. It's not making sense either today. But I have gratitude for my life today, where I am, and things I learned about myself.
Thank you, Irma. I really appreciate that. Hey, I know there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and I suppose in Europe, where you and I are from, Ukraine and Russia being one of them, and many people going through this exact experience as we speak. So it's not even 25 years old, it's current.
Yeah.
I heard a comment, I can't remember where the person was from, but they said here there is no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder. It's just traumatic stress disorder because it's not post.
Yeah.
It's current.
It's current, yeah.
And as I was reading a little bit about you, I want to come on to talk about your work, but I wonder, would you consider yourself to have had or have PTSD or see PTSD?
Complex trauma, lots of events. For me, lots of traumatic events, I can separate them. Complex trauma.
Would you be willing to share, how does that show up in your life right now? What are you doing for yourself to take care of yourself in relation to traumatic stress?
I entered therapy in my early 20s, and as part of my training, it's actually mandatory to have therapy. So as I was going through different trainings, the minimum was like 12 or 16 hours for modality that you do. And I really had a great supervisor at the time in UK. She's really supportive. And when I was doing courses with her, she always advocated for us to actually do therapy. That was great help. So I started addressing many different things that happened to me, already in my 20s, and having a child and understanding that you're traumatized. And I was scared bringing my child to the world, thinking that it's dangerous and I won't be able to protect my kid. That was a clear indication I need therapy. I started, and a lot of those events were addressed. So my kind of PTSD symptoms that I had in my teens and my 20s reduced. All those symptoms heavily went down. And for some of those memories, traumatic memories, I actually did a couple of different things, different modalities for each memory, because when things happen when you're so young, it doesn't resolve from the first. So you go back, and over the years, you start noticing your triggers, and compassionate inquiry is really great at helping you map out all your triggers and what's happening for you, and what's the perception, the belief that you're having, and what's the emotion that's present, and what's happening with your body. And for me, it was fascinating coming to compassionate inquiry in 2021, where I thought that I was just somewhat concerned. And I love that expression in UK. What was best thing for me in UK, having a light language for your experience. Because in Croatia, in Bosnia, we're very direct. I'm angry, I'm sad, and I'm this, and I'm that. So very vocal and open with that. But in UK, you are not full of fear and terror. You're somewhat concerned. And I love that, concern, being concerned, because it's such a light and wonderful word. Because over the years, I learned if you're openly frightened or angry, then you're unstable, and that's shameful. And you're weak.
Okay.
You're weak when you have these emotions and when you're so open about it. So I learned I am somewhat concerned. And it was a shock to find out in 2021 that concern is just a lighter name for fear.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, I'm full of fear. That's not possible. And then I started self-reflecting, and compassionate inquiry does that a lot to you. It just takes you through that process of what's happening for you. Where is that coming from? What do you make it mean? And then I started figuring out that I'm full of fear, which means I'm an anxious person. And then I started noticing that I'm quite a controlling person, because if you cannot control emotion inside of yourself, you start controlling your environment. And I had all these plans, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. First doesn't work out. I have second and the third. So there is this backup plan. And I was constantly looking ahead, what's coming my way to protect myself. So that's hypervigilance. So that was something that I had to then deal with.
Irma, can I interrupt you? Please forgive me for this. I say it with all compassion and respect. Sometimes when I speak to people who have a knowledge of therapy, we can use quite therapeutic language, and to reflect on, I was full of fear, I was an anxious person, I was controlling. If I can't control what's inside, we try to control our environment. How does that look in real life for a young woman who's in her late teens or early 20s? How does she show up in the world? How would her life be?
You're hiding your emotions through self-regulation, and self-regulation for me was bulimia.
Okay.
So every time I would experience lots of sadness, and sadness would come with lots of pain in my chest. So stuffing myself with cookies and drinking warm milk, and then waiting 20 minutes, and off I would go and put my finger down my throat. The pain that you experience when acid burns you, when you repeat that process 16 to 20 times, then the pain in your chest and that sadness, that fear, that anger, it disappears because you're in so much pain. You cannot swallow. Everything is burning and you disconnect. So I successfully disconnected from my feelings through eating disorder. And I was purposefully choosing that because gaining weight would as well indicate that I'm not doing well and people would be noticing. So I was not comfortable people noticing my emotional process, because I believe that if people figure out how I'm feeling, there was a high chance of me being crushed, me being at loss, and me being judged, me being shamed. Because when people know you're sad, this is where they could come and use you and abuse you. So as a kid, I believed that the world was unsafe. place where you get to be abused. And if you're perceived as weak, they're coming to get you. So controlling my emotions through certain behaviors was bringing me safety. And you control your environment in that way, not allowing people to see what you don't want them to see.
And it's breaking my heart a little bit to hear this conversation. When you talked about when you feel that pain of the acid reflux burning your chest and you can't feel sadness, and that's really sad. And I wonder, tell me a little bit more about how life then would have been for a young woman that was doing that. What else was going on? So you're making yourself sick to try and not feel sad. What else is going on for a young woman in that period of her life?
So my family dynamic, life changed a lot. From a place of abundance and things being great and lovely, coming to a place of poverty where it's difficult for my parents to find a job. You're not wanted there. My parents fighting. My dad, from a guy that was funny guy, loving guy, being so easily triggered and being rageful and angry. And there was bitterness of PTSD. And at the time I didn't know that was that, but I just noticed the heaviness of that bitterness. So I would make sure that I go to school, I do my homework, so I get good grades, and then just spend most of my time outside because it was so unpleasant being at home. So if I could not heal myself and regulate myself through good company of my friends, I would be then doing that with bulimia, because that was the safest way to keep me grounded in a way, because I didn't want others to see me cry, and I was not comfortable sharing anything with my parents because I didn't believe they can help me because they could not help themselves. And I didn't trust them because things shifted and changed. People changed so much after war. And my dad, after that front line, was a completely different person. So I was running away from home, in a sense, finding family outside of my home. So that was a safe haven. This is where I had connection. And I could share with my friends I was sad. And sitting at the beach, drinking wine, being underage, and company of 15, 20 people, and just singing, having the guitar and music, see. So that was calming and relaxing, but there was lots of sadness. I remember lots of sadness living within me. But it was safe showing it there because it was dark. You're lying down listening to that music and you're crying, and maybe somebody can see you, but that person next to you, they're crying too. So that was okay. That was safe. And then when evening finishes, you dry your tears and you go home back to whatever you were running away from. Yeah. So it was difficult. It was heavy. And I spent most of my teen years looking for the way to run away. And that was going to UK to study. And
what age were you then, Irma?
19.
19, okay.
Yeah.
So you painted a picture of, and I hope I'm not being crude, as I say, a pretty dark hole or a pretty dark place to be in. A young woman with bulimia and being sick and nowhere really at home to connect and be safe, and drinking as a young person and finding a space to be at the beach where it's dark to cry. And
pretty dark, gloomy, heavy. And yes, I was suicidal at the time as well, because I didn't see what was the point of living and growing up, because the world is so terrible and you have all these adults. Because I was really angry at adults because the things that were done during the war, and seeing parents burying their children in a sandwich bag. So seeing human pieces and walking through the field of that. So that just stays with you, and it just didn't make sense. So growing up, it sounded not a safe thing to do either at the time, because you have all these grown-ups, they're making such horrendous decisions and people are dying. And when with 11 and a half, you realize that during the war, human life has no value. You can be as good person as you want to be, but if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, horrible things can happen to you. So that was what I learned with 11 and a half. So when we finally moved away and I was on that island and it was like 14, 15, that was my reality. We were away from war, but I had that war within me. So I didn't know at the time I had that PTSD, but I was more successful than my parents hiding it and suppressing it. But that bitterness I was running away from. And I ran all the way to UK. I actually found out a few years after that I have it too. So I was not anymore as successful as I used to be, suppressing it. It just started coming up to the surface. So that bitterness was there. And that is when I entered the treatment. That was partially successful.
Let me pause you there, Irma, and I just want to, for our compassionate inquiry stepping stone tick box, let me guess that as all of this was going on, no one was helping you. No one was there to see this pain, this suffering, this eating disorder, this rage, this anger.
I was very good at masking it, yes. I was very successful. For that reason, I didn't choose anorexia or binging, because you could see fluctuation in weight.
Yeah.
So bulimia was the way to go, and nobody knows. So you have privacy in your misery, and I like that, privacy in my misery. So that brought safety for me.
Pretty smart behavior, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty clever girl to be able to recognize that I don't want anorexia, I don't want binging. Bulimia is the way to go so that I can have privacy in my misery. That's pretty strategic thinking.
Yeah. So if I want to fall apart and share that misery, I will choose those people. And after all these events, it took me a while to connect with people and put my guard down and actually trust. I would fall apart then in a planned way. And that would bring safety for me. The only people very close to me would know how I truly felt and what's happening inside of me.
That's a hefty burden to carry for a really young person, Irma.
Yes, that's one side of it. But the other side is, looking back, I'm just amazed how resourceful I was.
Yeah.
And I'm just like in awe with the younger version of me. All the hoops I was jumping and things I was figuring out about the life and the world. It was important to me for people not to think less of me because I was coming from war area. Because there's a label that's coming with that you're not going to perform, you're not going to do so well, you will be a burden to state, or you're not going to be a loyal employee, or no, I am strong and capable. You can rely on me. I'm here. I'm independent.
Yeah, and I can see the resolve in your face as you say that. It's that determination. It's almost a determined jaw.
Yeah. It was like, my past will not define me. That was that kid in me. It's like, life is not going to be taken away from me. So that's coming from ex-Yugoslavia. That's something that I really appreciate about communism, equality that existed before war. Equality, and you can make it. It's your right. Okay. So that was instilled in me. And my dad was always saying to me, yeah, you can do great things. You can do whatever you want. Education is really important. Just push forward, look forward. You always have a choice. I still have that belief mixed with that bitterness and misery. So I had different experiences within me, but this stayed with me, this belief from a young childhood. So I was like, yes, I'm falling apart, I'm depressed, but I'm going to work and I'm studying. So good days are coming. They're somewhere there. I cannot see them. So let's just roll with it. But yeah, there was definitely that. My past will not define me.
And then you briefly mentioned going to a treatment center and moving to the UK to study. What was the timeline of those two things you were describing just there?
I left Croatia when I was like 19 and a half, and I had no money.
Could I also say there, Irma, I have a daughter, I met her this morning, who's 19. And again, if she listens to this, she'll kill me. I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, but 19, like my daughter at 19, she's still a girl. I know she's a young woman, but she's still a girl. She's 19. Yeah, sorry. I just thought it was important to mention that as well. 19 is just a little thing.
Yeah, I just decided that's it. I finished my high school and it's time to run. And I had no money. My mom, she bought me a plane ticket. Dad gave me 150 pounds. And I had one bag with my stuff. And I came to UK. And idea was for me to go and study. But I had to get a job. So I started as an au pair. And then I was figuring out, what are all the laws in UK? how do you go about things, changing your visa and everything, and becoming a student. And I figured it out. And in a year or so, started preparations to go in that direction, improving my English. And I met my partner. We married. I'm still with my husband that I met.
Oh, don't tell me he's an Englishman, please.
Yeah, we met at uni.
And I'm just saying that playfully. No offense to any English people that are listening. That's my Irish bias coming out there. I'm sorry. So he was a Croatian guy living in the UK.
In UK, yeah, he was there at uni, and we met there. And that was such a lovely, scary, and horrendous experience at the same time, because I wanted to exit and run, because one of the things I learned that the only way you get to be hurt is if you enter a relationship, if you attach. But if you don't attach, then you're safe. So I tried to kill that relationship a couple of times, but he was smart and he figured it out. And here we are still together. So I started uni. I got pregnant. That was interesting because pregnancy hormones and post-pregnancy hormones, they messed up my system. And this is how postnatal depression and everything just surfaced. And this is how I entered the treatment. At one point, it was just like, I woke up one morning and I realized, oh my dear, I'm so messed up. This is so horrendous. My parents were in a better state at this age than I was. And look what they've done to me. So, what I'm going to do to my kids. So I should not continue to live. I should be better without me. This is how my treatment started. Me being depressed and suicidal, they almost refused treatment because they didn't expect me to do well in therapy, because the only reason why I wanted at the time to enter therapy is for the sake of my daughter. So for them, that was not good enough reason, but they were scared to send me home. So they provided therapy for me and I responded well. And this was beginning of my journey resolving things. But again, lots of memories I had to work through and let go of some of them. And lots of beliefs attached to it. People are scary, people can hurt you, and the world is a very scary place. So it took me a while to part with those beliefs because I was so holding on to them. That was bringing me safety and constantly scanning the environment for the possible danger. So there I was like 22.
And this is a little aside. You have, I would imagine, a grown-up daughter?
Yes, she's 25.
25, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got her to adulthood. You got her through.
Yeah.
When both my kids turned 18, I celebrated. I'm like, yes.
Yes.
We managed to get them to 18. Even in the terrible state that I was, we got them through. So, Irma, then that study, when I read that study for you, was around psychology and psychotherapy and that type of thing?
Yeah. And the last couple of years, it focuses more on traumatology. Yeah.
Yeah, traumatology is a beautiful word. And reading again things like CAT, CBT, IFS. We know you're trained in compassionate inquiry. I'm one of our facilitators, and I want to chat about that. I really see a young woman deeply traumatized, in a very difficult position, about to have a child, going through therapy and education, and straightening herself out is a very clunky term, but healing from that trauma. Tell me a little bit more about some of the skills or some of the things that you have in your toolbox that you use for helping people right now then.
I'm trained in different modalities, and the reason for that is because different people, different backgrounds, and kind of family history. And some people don't respond so well to certain treatments. So you learn you need to adapt and adjust your treatment. A lot of my clients are coming with a history of childhood abuse, childhood sexual abuse, and then abuse in later years and assaults. For some clients, for example, compassionate inquiry brings people a lot into the body and checking in what's there. But for a lot of my clients, body is such an unsafe place to be.
Yeah.
Especially if you survived a couple of sexual assaults. Getting into your body, connecting with your body is something that gets you in a state of panic attack. So for that reason, I'm trained in different modalities. And with some of my clients, I work top down first. So it brings clarity to people and you challenge those beliefs and bringing different point of view and a lots of stabilization work. Compassionate inquiry does as well, brings in stabilization, but some clients are refusing to go in that direction. So I would use other modalities instead, because some clients really want to know what's coming next and they want to know the structure. So structured kind of protocol type of therapies, they prefer them and they like to see how well they're doing. So for example, I use PCL-5 scale, so kind of PTSD checklist for DSM-5, and it can be used to assess severity of PTSD symptoms. So clients can see, how from a score 47, they're going down to 43, 37, 32. So they can measure that and they can read in advance what's happening in the next session. So it helps them. And some clients are very comfortable jumping in and doing bottom-up process, and you just stay with the body, stay with the process. You learn how to hold your experience and release it. For that reason, I know different modalities, and kind of some of my clients, if they're not paying for their sessions, if insurance company is paying, so they will only pay a certain number, and you have a very short period of time to get the client from A to B for them to be able to keep their job and in that sense pay for the mortgage. Then I would use protocol. It's to a certain degree client-led, but therapist-led, really. And what is beautiful about compassionate inquiry, it's very much client-led. Everything happens on client's terms. So there is that freedom that doesn't so much exist in the other modalities. So I spend a lot of time picking up different tools, different skills that were helpful to me as well. With every training, I would look into it, how much of this applies to me and what I can take home and use myself. But most of all, what I appreciate is the gradual exposure, introducing things in small, manageable doses. That's very much, it's present in other modalities too, but in compassionate inquiry, very much because it's client-led.
Yeah.
So it's not me who is titrating, but actually clients. So
That's one of the joys I have with compassionate inquiry as well, is we just go as fast or as slow as the client's organism is allowing that to happen. I'm really acknowledging as well, Irma, that for people who are healing and doing their healing work, I sometimes get a little bit frustrated at the idea of, because I too have people refer people to me for 6 sessions. And I get very frustrated at the idea that we're limited to 6 sessions. Sometimes it only takes 2, but sometimes it takes 22, and sometimes it takes 202. It's as long as someone needs. And the point I want to make now for anyone that is doing their healing work, and maybe you would agree with this, that you're not a failure, or you're not broken, or you're not damaged beyond repair if you can't manage to do your healing within the 6 allotted sessions.
yeah, that's true. That's the thing. Insurance companies, they have their own agenda and they're trying to offer as little possible time, because it's to do with how much they're willing to pay. And obviously, if people are really struggling and they're unable to pay for their own therapy, they have to accept that. And I'm trying to do my best to adjust my work accordingly. But compassionate inquiry is so beautiful in helping integrate everything. And especially when with certain therapies, different parts are activated. So you're processing different things, and it's not so much client-led modality. So you will have reaction there, but compassionate inquiry does a beautiful job integrating that and supporting clients and allowing those parts to speak and find their way. So I really appreciate that about CI.
Yeah, and so I want to talk to you about your compassion inquiry work, Irma. Something that I really like about CI, and I often find myself, again, I'm curious about your thoughts. I often find myself asking a client about their thing. What is the thing that you love to do? What makes your heart sing? What enlivens you? And again, just for our listeners, the ability to heal through swimming, nature, art, music, dance, martial arts, whatever that may be. And for me, when I'm doing compassionate inquiry work, that will often come up for people. they say things like, I really used to love playing guitar and I haven't done that in years. Would you agree that compassionate inquiry helps people with that?
Yes, brings a lot of kind of reconnection with yourself, with the playfulness, with joy, in a really gentle way. Those tastes of victory.
Yeah.
People connect with real self. I don't know, different people have a different name for it. Higher self, real self, self essence. Because through releasing bitterness of PTSD, that's something it took me a while to let go and release. I started connecting with joy. Joy permanently entered my life, and gratitude too. Before that, it was really difficult to connect and to see that. I didn't believe that people could be so happy and joyful. It looked fake from a place where I was coming from. So seeing my clients releasing those memories and releasing themselves from those memories and the emotions and processing, you connect with life. You start actually thriving. So what is really beautiful is you notice you're not surviving. It's not survival anymore. You actually, you're living, you're breathing, you're living, and there's that freedom that comes with it. And it's very experiential. For me, when I entered compassionate inquiry and seeing all these wonderful facilitators doing the magical work, especially seeing founding facilitators showing up in a real time, demonstrating ability to experience this equanimity, this calmness while holding clients through their really difficult and challenging, almost horrendous moments of their life that they're sharing in therapy, and also having capacity to hold themselves, aspects of themselves that are reacting and actually showing up for the clients. That was mind-blowing experience for me, actually, to see that. Gave me possibility, brought that belief that's possible for me. It's shocking to sit in this space now here with you to talk about it, because I was in a completely different place in 2021, where I was just introduced to that idea, seeing people living in that way. And I would like as well to take opportunity now in this place here with you, just to thank Sadaram and all the founding facilitators and Gabor and everybody that actually is here, and we are able to have this community to give this experience and get people to that level where they can grow, where they can heal, and they can experience that calmness and hold people in their most horrendous moments, have a reaction, hold themselves, and showing up for their clients. So that's something, it's not from this world. So for me, that's amazing to be in this place and able to reflect on that.
Thank you, Irma, and right back at you. I sit here with the same level of gratitude for the community that I get to sit in as well, and the work that they do. And a couple of things, I just wanted to lay a little bookmark on. You said the experience of the release of trauma from our bodies. That's a really beautiful thing when we find a modality that helps us heal and we experience the lack of something. Oh, this is how I'm meant to feel. This is what being alive feels like. And it's the absence of that anxiety or fear or...
No need to control. Yeah, no need to control your language, pretending you're somebody else. No need to control your environment, just living and letting others live.
It's a wonderful thing, isn't it, to have that freedom? That's liberation. For me, that's enlightenment and liberation and freedom. And
yes, thank you. Yes, enlightenment, liberation, freedom, exactly. Thank you for putting it in those words. Totally resonates with me.
Yeah, thank you. And something else you said earlier, I just want to add a little bit more to that as well. You talked about how we arrived in compassionate inquiry as different people. And it made me laugh because I know when I joined compassionate inquiry, I thought, hey, I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty compassionate guy. And yeah, I'm pretty assured of how I show up in the world. And then we go through this compassionate inquiry training and our dyads and our triads and our therapy. And I realized, oh, I've still got a few things going on that I need to take care of. And through compassionate inquiry, we're able to do that. Yeah, so I just wonder how many of the thousands of people that come through compassionate inquiry arrive thinking, yeah, I'm okay. And then we think, oh, maybe not.
Yes, and then it's a shock, yes. Going through all those videos and dies and triads, yes. It's a huge shock when you can see so many things that you still need to look at and work on. But the level of support you receive in the community, in the training, it's wonderful. Everybody gets opportunity to grow, to be supported.
Here you and I am, and this conversation's about you, but speaking about your early childhood and moving and assimilating and losing a little bit of yourself and not having support and bulimia and moving to the UK and starting studying and getting pregnant and entering therapy and doing all this work. And then here you are. This podcast is a collection of stories from trauma to wellness or trauma to healing or trauma to peace. And here you are, an adult woman with a grown-up child and her partner doing this wonderful work. Tell me a little bit about your landing as a compassionate inquiry facilitator. How did that land for you? How did that make you feel?
That's really interesting because I had opportunity to work with Sadaram, and in one occasion she asked me, where do I see myself in future? I was like, next year I think I'll be one of your facilitators, and she was in stitches. She was laughing. So it didn't take a year, it actually took 2 years. So I had this vision, I'll be there. So I'll be part of that community. And I just saw myself, I'll be there. Yes. There was that knowing, actually having opportunity to be part of the team, be there supporting students, sharing compassionate inquiry experience and making a world better place in that way, and helping people connect with themselves, with the joy. There is this humble as well experience, and I'm in awe with all this, but it's still, I cannot believe it. I'm here. So there is still that. But I'm as well noticing many different places how I can grow. So that's a wonderful side of actually being part of this community, the level of support you receive and a space for self-reflection that's there. And as you're self-reflecting, support that comes from your peers, from this whole community, and being allowed to be free.
And again, that comes from trauma healing, and it comes from community, and it comes from doing our work and being with people who can support that. But to be allowed to be yourself and to be free is one of the greatest joys, isn't it? I was about to make a comment that I think of this community as me as a pebble being tumbled around this community, and the more that I tumble around it, the more it rubs my rough edges off, the more it shows me my blind spots that I can work on and rub these little bits off. Maybe in 1,000 years or 10 lifetimes, I'll be a nice, smooth, polished diamond or something. I don't know. Let's see. I'll meet you in 1,000 years, Irma, and we'll see.
Yeah, I think I am hoping for the same. Yeah.
Irma, one question, you've probably heard it 1,000 times, maybe not, because you probably heard it with every interview that I do, and I ask it playfully, but I'm really curious. I really like to hear it as well. If, Irma, with all your experience, with all that you've been through, with all that you've done, the successes, the highs and the lows, and everything else that has happened in your life, if you could whisper a phrase or a word into the ear of humanity, what would that be?
What stuck with me was a quote from Fitzgerald. Let us learn to show our friendship for a man when he's alive and not after he's dead. What it means to me is when we are stuck in our perceptions, beliefs, and we hold on to our truths, and those are the only ones that matter and exist for us, we are at a loss. So I would invite your listeners, our listeners, to be open to different possibilities, opening their hearts and inquire what is there and if there is another possibility, because if they do, they choose that path, they will start living and thriving instead of surviving.
Oh, thank you, Irma. That was really beautiful. You reminded me of a little poem. I wasn't intending to do this, so this is completely ad hoc. Can I read you a very short poem? This is in response to what you just wanted to whisper into the ear of humanity. And I'll pronounce his name wrong. It's a Jewish name. It's Yehuda Amichai. Yehuda Amichai. And the poem is called The Place Where We Are Right. And he says, from the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, like a plough. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. The place where we are right. Thank you for listening to that, Irma.
Thank you. That was beautiful. That was so beautiful.
I think quite often we find ourselves on a place where we think that we are right. Irma, if people wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Through Compassionate Inquiry websites. That's the best way.
Irma, I am really honoured to have had you for an hour to chat and share so deeply. I just want to honour that you shared so openly and authentically and honestly about yourself and your story, and I'm really grateful that you did that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
If you're not a therapist or a healer, but you heard our guest describe the personal transformations they experienced during their compassionate inquiry journeys and wonder, what might that be like for me? There is a program that is offered to anyone who wants to experience the power of Gabor Mate's approach to trauma healing. I'm Kevin Young, and I've been facilitating CI circles since 2022. I've seen people transform in many ways. I've seen people change beliefs, relationships. I've seen people change how they show up in the world. I have seen people literally change how they look in front of my very eyes. There are many, many ways that people change during compassionate inquiry circles. Circles is a 10-week small group experience. Click the link in the show notes. That'll bring you to a web page that gives you all you'll need to figure out if this is for you.
The Gifts of Trauma is a weekly podcast that features personal stories of trauma healing, transformation, and the gifts revealed on the path to authenticity. Listen on Apple, Spotify, all podcast platforms. Rate, review, and share it with your clients, colleagues, and family. Subscribe and you won't miss an episode. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personal therapy or a DIY formula for self-therapy.